Welcome to the Heroes of Reality podcast, a podcast about the game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
What up, young adventurers? We are here today with Lyle Maxson. He is a pioneer of Transformative Entertainment, beginning his career as a creative director impacting thousands of people at the world's largest music festivals. His immersive design agency, the Courtiers, I hopefully said that right, and passion for biohacking led him to co-founding Andromeda Entertainment, a VR publisher that brings the market for games for good. Birthed out of the pandemic, GeniusX, a VR education platform, is Lyle's next horizon for creating a metaverse that upgrades the real avatar that is you, with a goal to better humanity's relationship with technology along the way. In addition, he is addressing the world's mental health crisis with the creation of Entheo Digital, a digital therapeutics company pursuing FDA clearances and the creation of wellness technologies marketplace at the intersection of psychedelic therapy and experiential medicine. So without any delay, I'd like to welcome Lyle. Hey.
Hello.
Hey, brother. Thanks for coming on the show.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be a lot of fun, man. I'm really excited to chat with you. We were talking a couple minutes before this, but I'd like to first start things off on, like, first of all, what got you into the whole, we'll say, personal development space, the be better, upgrading yourself space? Can you talk to me a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, of course. It definitely goes back pretty far. Yeah, I mean, it started pretty early for me, but I'm happy to just share the relevant points. So, as you mentioned in the intro, I was very into music festivals in the music industry when I was in college, and really started to wrap my head around how to create nonprofit type events and start to really generate massive impact using the voice of millions of millennials that go to these large scale EDM events. Quickly realized that that wasn't going to be very profitable, and that there was a lot of people interested in that space that hadn't been able to really do it successfully. So I actually pursued sponsorship and started to create a sponsorship agency within a large production group called Relentless Beats. So that led me to eventually, I mean, really, like, right off the bat, I was looking at how do you bring in companies into these big mainstream events that aren't the Coca-Colas and Red Bulls of the world, but actually transformative companies. And one of those was True Rest, which is a deprivation tank company, float pod company. And honestly, that was a big catalyst for me. I started looking at how to create activations that really inspired an audience, so they weren't just sitting there staring at a DJ on stage, but they were actually utilizing these wellness technologies at the event. So the sponsor would come in, they'd pay to be there, and they would create an amazing experience for the audience. So I was kind of getting the best of both worlds and basically like self-funding my dream of creating impact at scale with really awesome tech. So that eventually led me to looking into VR. My actually current business partner, one of them, Robin Arnott, created this Sound Self, which is a biofeedback meditation experience that I tried, I think, in like 2015, and it just blew my mind. And I started to really see the capacity of software to make a larger impact than even large scale music festivals could. And you know, really comparing the two of looking at software versus you know, the music industry, and then looking at some of the really expensive hardware like deprivation tanks or cryotherapy chambers, even like some of the, you know, seemingly simple small wearables are upwards of $1,000 plus. And then all of a sudden I saw the software that's $30, you could download it, and all of a sudden, you know, it creates this life-changing experience.
Yeah.
So that was really the start for me. And of course, I've been pursuing neurohacking, biohacking as just an evangelist and a huge fan for a long time, and really looking at how to really rewrite the conversation around technology and inspire people to jump into this industry, understanding that it's a train that's moving, and we don't need people to run away from it and being afraid of the AI overlords, but to actually jump in and understand that there's new mediums coming out like VR and AR, that you have the ability as a independent creator to really impact at a fundamental, ground floor level that I don't see the possibilities of doing within traditional media like TV and radio or music or whatever you could think of that's been out for 100 years. So yeah, that's kind of the short Reader's Digest.
Super fun, man. Let's break down a couple of these pieces. One, I love the fact because marketing activations is so alive in the VR space, and looking to actually, how do you turn something from just like a thing into an actual experience? Marketing activations, VR and marketing activations is the big thing. I actually never thought about using it transformative wellness and combining those together as a thing. I think that's brilliant and good for you, man. That's awesome. So more people should do transformative marketing activations. I think it's great. Deprivation Chambers. I don't know if you know, where are you based out of? Where are you locally based?
I'm in LA. I'm in north of LA in Topanga Canyon.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so if you look at that, I was talking to Crash, the guy who runs the deprivation tanks over in Venice, and he was actually, because I went through it and I did the deprivation tanks and I went through it on edibles and all that, and I had a crazy experience where I lost myself for about 2 hours, and then I completely lost where I was at, and I freaked out because it was complete darkness, and I felt like the bad guy from Terminator 2 that gets dropped in the lava. I'm like, ah! And I jumped out. I was like, oh my God,
I've had that experience before. I've had that exact experience before.
You know what I'm talking about? I was like, I'm gonna die. And I came out, I was like, oh, okay, here's where I'm at. But I was talking to Crash, and Crash was saying that he was trying to use the deprivation chambers as actually a form of learning, where he'd actually take the lightest field of view for almost like a projector screen and put it on the inside of the tank, so that you're basically, the best way to learn is by removing all of the distractions, and no better way than being in a deprivation chamber where you lose all distractions possible. VR is an amazing mechanism, and I'm sure it's probably a bit more cost effective than his system, but it is a pretty cool thing to think. Have you ever thought about combining like the deprivation tanks and the learning systems together into one system?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I bring up that story too as an origin story because it relates so well to what I'm doing now. My business partner with GeniusX, which is the education platform that we've been building in VR, he's the founder actually of True Rest. So I met him through the festival world, but he's easily the largest deprivation tank company. I think they have like 40 plus locations open around the US and like 100 sold. They have a big franchise model, kind of like the massage envy of float spas. And yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about that. And yeah, I mean, you hit it right there. It's like VR is much more accessible, and I believe creates a similar hyper learning experience. And there's a lot of science that's out now around improved cognition, memory, confidence. Actually being able to apply the knowledge that you're learning as opposed to just passively asynchronistically consuming it. And yeah, we have talked about putting projectors inside of the deprivation tank specifically for not around really hyper learning, which I know like the Navy SEALs and things are actually doing, but more around using biofeedback and actually creating a deeper meditative state and taking it from being sensory deprivation to like almost sensory overload, but doing it in a very thoughtful, intention-based way of just connecting with your body and your voice.
Yeah, that's powerful. And you're right. You're basically taking your inner modalities and bringing it to the surface and making it become consciously aware, and using that kind of system to be able to leverage that to get to where you want to go. And I think a lot of times we're unconscious of our internal modalities and structures. And if you can take that biofeedback and bring it to the surface and have people become aware of it, awareness is the first step to the transformation of people having. So I can absolutely see where that wants to go. But deprivation tank is so much more expensive versus a Quest 2 headset that you can order on Amazon, or at least you were able to order it. Now the whole being sued thing, and they're gonna a couple of weeks they're gonna come out with a new mask and all that stuff. So what do you think? Let me ask you this: how does psychedelics play a role in this transformative experiences that you're talking about now, and how has it personally played a role for you?
Yeah, so I founded this VR publishing company called Andromeda about 3 years ago now, and and we were really focused on the mainstream gaming market and really looking at how to basically Trojan horse these esoteric wellness concepts into interactive very fun, engaging experiences. And we were basically creating what is now coined digital therapeutics before it was even a term. And recently, about this time last year, a gentleman named Adam Ghazali has an amazing company called Akili, and they created the first FDA-approved video game. And this game kids could download on their cell phone, and it's specifically focused on ADHD. And so, this game, playing it once or twice a week, creates new neural pathways that essentially the goal is to get them off of their medication, Adderall and Ritalin and things. And so what that did was open up FDA clearance for this new category called digital therapeutics. And recently we created a spin-off company from Andromeda called Entheo Digital that is focused on just that, pursuing FDA trials, working within psychedelic therapy specifically. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that the psychedelic industry is exploding. And it's not so coincidental that digital therapeutics, psychedelic therapy, precision psychiatry, all of these things are coming together at the same time. So what we've created with Sound Self is this biofeedback experience. You're using your voice to tone into the headset. And now we're actually using AVS, which is audio-visual stimulation glasses, as opposed to a headset. But you're toning into a microphone, and that's creating. I'll touch on that. So we essentially converted it from VR for the deeper therapeutic impact that closing your eyes and allowing strobing lights harmonized to your voice basically allows your brain to create the visuals instead of us doing that for you. It's also much more cost effective. So it's not only more therapeutic, but the price point on these AVS glasses is around the price of what a Quest would be, except you could just plug it directly into your laptop, where Sound Self in its current state for VR is just PC VR. So, taking it from like a $3,000 setup with a gaming computer to now a $300 pair of glasses that plug into your MacBook. So that's the two big reasons. But yeah, essentially the experience is that you're toning. So you're prompted in the beginning with a guided meditation to start to use your voice to harmonize or vocalize. I'm not a singer at all. So what I typically do is just chant, like oming. But it's any sort of humming or prolonged tone. You could scream into it, and that basically creates a feedback of your voice sounding like a choir. And then creating haptic sensations, so the vibration of your own voice, and then also simulating visuals to that. So it drops you into a very deep meditative state. And why that's relevant for psychedelic therapy is we've been doing some pilot studies, and we're actually now diving into much deeper research. But the initial pilot studies show very similar brainwave scans as a full dose of psilocybin mushrooms. So compared to a brain on mushrooms, on psychedelics versus on Sound Self, that's very similar, meaning like your default mode network turning off, increase in alpha and theta, and in particularly gamma brainwaves, which is really interesting because gamma is pretty hard to hit with a lot of these digital therapeutics. And what we see it as is a primer.
Are you measuring that with a biofeedback device? Like how are you measuring the gamma?
Yeah, so it was done through MRIs, and I know we've been doing a few things, but we've done 2 pilot studies. So we're going into much deeper. We just hired a chief science officer who we believe is the first doctorate to have his doctorate in digital therapeutics. So it's very interesting. He's like specializes in that. We met him because he used Sound Self as his thesis for his doctorate. So essentially, we're really pursuing that for 2 reasons. One is that psychedelic therapy, a lot of times they hit this barrier to entry where people that do have treatment-resistant psychiatric disorders, they don't want to do psychedelics. They're terrified of them, and for good reason. Even myself doing psychedelics in the past and doing it with a therapist, it's still, very it's nerve-wracking before going into it. So we see Sound Self as being a really great primer for people that may or may not have done psychedelics in the past, and they could essentially create a psychedelic experience. We call it a technodelic experience that has an off button. They could try it for 20 minutes and turn the experience off, and then the therapist is actually able to monitor how these people are responding under this altered state. maybe dose them according to that. And then similarly, with the integration phase, there's not a lot of tools for integrating psychedelic treatment. A lot of it is around journaling, maybe spending time in nature. But what we've seen anecdotally, and we're pursuing research on this as well, is that if you do sound self a day after, a week after, even 6 months after your session, you could actually bring back the same epiphanies and the feelings that you had during your psychedelic therapy treatment.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things about these transformative psychedelic experiences, is that you basically get a pathway to go, okay, what does your avatar look like at level 100? Okay, all thing is unity, all thing is love, all thing is connection. We are all one. You get a glimpse of that, and then you go backwards in time and you get stuck, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, you want to get that back way? Here's the real path. Go climb the mountain. And so what's cool about that is you're causing this glimmer effect. You allow that to, you open the door and you allow them to kind of get more the integration phase. And so you're allowing them. It sounds like you're creating space for that integration phase that allows you to kind of move along more quickly and power level up to that avatar self, which is really cool.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's really cultural too, like the fact that we do these psychedelic treatments, or like go off and take mushrooms with friends, and then you have to go back and just be in the world, and, go back to your laptop, go back to your everyday work, to enable people to use these types of tools that are extremely, again, fun. They're not like eat your vegetables where you have to do this thing. But that's actually something that you want to go back to, and it's just integrated into your lifestyle, enables you to, create that lasting effect.
I don't know if you've ever had a bad trip on mushrooms or ayahuasca, but I'm gonna tell you, there's some vegetables to be eaten on that journey.
Yeah,
there's definitely.
Absolutely. No, and I completely agree.
You do want to be careful, because what I call so when you take in, the reason why it's like Inception, right, is that you start with a stable reality, right? And then every time you incept down a level of the reality paradigm, you become more unstable, right? And so I call that reality stacking. So you're inside VR while on psychedelics or some other thing. And so as you go through those different layers, everything starts to get more and more unstable. And so you've got to then be very careful with that person's consciousness. You are now the caretaker of that, much like a shaman would be in a circle. You're the person that created an experience. You want to make sure, and that's why you probably have the therapists and all those other people on standby. How do you mitigate the situations where it sounds like you're combining psychedelics and VR, or these other types of things?
So to be clear, our entire team, including myself and co-founders, we fully believe that the medicine speaks for itself. So this is a treatment that you would be doing before or after your session, but not actually during it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Have you ever tried?
Yeah, we think psychedelics speak for themselves.
Really? I don't know. Have you ever tried mushrooms in VR? That's quite the experience. So it's
Yeah, I have done it. I have had some cannabis before going into it, and it was definitely a different experience for me. Absolutely.
100%. Yeah. So, by the way, I got a question. You got a very pink background. What's going on back there? Talk to me about this. It reminds me of my Burning Man camp pink heart. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on back there.
It's so funny you bring that up, because I live in this kind of compound. My girlfriend and I just got this epic 3-acre farmhouse here in Topanga, and there was a music studio that was off-site of the main house. And there was a bunch of soundproofing on the back wall. So I literally just like tore the soundproofing off and revealed this color wall that I actually haven't done anything with yet. But yeah, this is I'm currently inside the biohacking dojo, where I have like vibrating beds, infrared lights, chi machines, the VR play space setup.
I love it. I had one of my favorite experiences talking about biohacking, and let's just like not necessarily VR, but one of the things I did, I got to go with my other two co-founders in 2017 to the jungles of Peru, Iquitos, and we got to do several sessions of ayahuasca while having those aura rings on. And so we were doing a personal development.
I got one on right now.
Yeah, I don't have it right now, but it's charging. And but I had it on. It was crazy when I was doing that, and I was what felt like connecting with God while going in into the cosmos. I felt like I got thrown into the slipstream, and I just like was up. It's a longer conversation, but when I looked at my biofeedback ring, I did 5.5 hours of REM while on it.
Wow.
I don't know what it means, but like it was like everything else, what it looks like normally. It does that.
Yeah.
With this one, it was like up and across, and I was like, oh, wow, what is that about? I was like, I still don't know what it is today, what that necessarily meant, but it was definitely a transformative experience
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm happy if I get like 45 minutes of REM. And you brought up Inception too. I'm a big lucid dreamer. So I could only imagine having 5 hours of the dream world would be pretty amazing.
Talk to me about that. I've never been able to do the lucid dreaming things. What's been your experience like that? What advice do you have for that?
Yeah. So that's actually what began my spiritual journey, was doing deep lucid dream research, reading the books. And what's really interesting, there's a lot of interesting things about it, but one that's really prominent is, unlike any other skill that you learn, you get better at it by simply talking about it and reading about it. You know, you can't do that for like golf. You can't like improve your golf swing by reading a book about it. I mean, maybe, you know, incrementally, but with lucid dreaming, the more you talk about it, the more you read about it, it starts to ingrain in your subconscious and enables you to actually wake up in your dream. So I got deep into that, like the Tibetan dream yoga, which is a type of meditative experience that you could actually do inside of your dream world. And yeah, I mean, there's some amazing books. There's one called just Lucid Dreaming by Robert Wagner that I highly recommend. It's basically like a step-by-step guide that's incredible. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really useful tips. The one that I always give people just to start off is having a dream journal. And I don't even use like a notebook. I literally just use the notepad on my phone. And even if you don't remember your dreams, simply by waking up and typing into your phone, I don't remember my dream, like I'm feeling good while I wake up, like maybe, you know, charting your emotional feeling when you actually get out of bed, that again programs your subconscious to say, okay, I'm going to remember my dreams because now I'm in the process and the habit of writing them down in the morning. And, you know, there's a lot of steps to it, but and it's definitely not consistent. I'm happy if I get a few lucid dreams a month. But you know, it's basically like our original VR.
I call imagination the OG VR, because it really is.
There you go.
Because we can do it. We can do it to a certain amount of fidelity. The only issue is that it's siloed, and the only issue is that the data bandwidth between me and you is only so much. So like, you know, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And 1,000 words make up a video, and 1,000 videos stitched all together is probably a 360 experience, or whatever you want to call that, right? But the issue is that what's inside my mental model state when I go, you know, picture an elephant, right? And then the only thing is there's only a certain amount of bandwidth going between me and you on that process. So I have a good model, you have a model, but then we have to reconcile those models by us colliding with, well, what I meant was a pink elephant. What I meant was a stand on hind legs. What I meant was this. And so the problem is we don't have those perfect words to connect. What are your thoughts around Elon Musk and Neuralink and going into that? Would you do it? What do you feel about that? Can you talk to me a bit about your thoughts, feelings, and things around that?
Yeah. The short answer is no, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, I'm very much not a transhumanist. I have gone to a few conferences that have literally been like centered around cyborgs and like, you know, what that looks like. I think the woman that hosted the last conference I went to she was born without an arm. And so she has this like amazing prosthetic robotic arm that she could control based off of just like flexing her, you know, her shoulder, her neurons in her shoulder. And she was like on a Super Bowl commercial shooting archery with her bionic arm. So it was like a really cool concept. I was like, okay, obviously the medical applications are amazing, but then you get into like the whole conference, they were just eating like, you know, they were drinking Coke and like eating bags of chips were like the snack on the table. And it's like, okay, clearly like people are just trying to shortcut, you know, their health, their longevity, their consciousness in a lot of ways. And I feel like that's what Neuralink really is. I mean, as a futurist, I'm always thinking about these things, and I do see this polarity happening in the next 10 to 20 years where people are either going to be using technology in a way to improve their current state, meaning something like Sound Self, you're using vocal toning, you could take the VR headset off and then you still have that tool. You're acquiring a tool that you could use in your real life. You could go out and sit in nature and use vocal toning that, you know, tribes and Buddhists and, you know, people have been doing for millennia as a way to drop into a parasympathetic state. Or you could, you know, unplug this chip into the back of your brain that induces theta brainwave states at a push of a button. I am a very strong believer in, naturalist. I think it's going to be two ways. It's going to be the cyborgs versus the naturalists, and both people are going to be using technology. It's just a matter of how you use it. Are you using it as a way to, like create a more positive experience, or basically like, erase that and shortcut your way to whatever state that you want to be in?
Okay, so 100% agree with you. To agree, I'm also going to call BS on a couple of things you're saying. You're a naturalist with those ear pods in your ear and a biofeedback ring on, and so yeah, kind of, right. And I will agree, but technology is nothing more than the magnification of human intent, right? So if you're a jerk, or if you're lazy, or if you're whatever the things might be, the technology only makes you more of that thing, right? It just gives you a bigger voice. It gives you a bigger thing. So it depends on what you use the technology for. If you are inherently a lazy human who wants to eat bags of Doritos and things like that and everything else, and that's not everybody. Here's the thing. One of the things that I believe is that the truths are usually a paradox being held at the same time. It's holding the exact opposites at the same time. Are we an individual autonomous self that can make our own decisions, or are we collected to unity and all things at that? Are we completely selfish individuals, or are we collaborative individuals? We are both. We are always
The middle
both
path.
We're always both, right? So it depends on if you take this technology and you say, okay, we're going to show you a better path, right? Like who was it? Huxley or somebody. He's like, you don't try to change behaviors, you give them a new tool, and through a new tool, new behaviors happen, right? And so it just depends on how do you design that to allow people to be able to do that. So one thing that you're talking about is using technology to reconnect humanity, both with themselves and the world and each other at large, right? So
yeah, I think I'm really glad you called me out on it too, because when I think naturalist, I think, in 20 years, are you using technology to enhance the real world, or are you using it to replace it? And I think that's the big differentiator for me. And then looking at something, like everyone being afraid of AI, and I agree with you too. Like the technology is just what we program it to be. It's inherently neutral. But at the same time, it's like you look at AI and just the productivity machine and spinning that capitalism wheel and making us more efficient and, live longer and whatever it is. And then there's the opposite, and what you also touched on, which is how do we create immersive connection technologies that actually bring us closer to ourselves, as opposed to pulling us away from ourselves and eventually being, a floating brain in a vat, being plugged into a simulation.
As long as you got hooked up to that pleasure dopamine button that you can just hit, it all.
Not for me, man. I think honestly, I think the biggest thing is it would just trap you in this dimension. Like I'm a firm believer that there's life after death, and if you're going to trap yourself in a 3D or even less, a computer version of yourself, then you actually won't be able to move on. And that's terrifying. That's like hell to me.
Well, you're right, but you're talking about that. We always transcend through the death of ourselves. The death of our ego, the death of our identity, the death of thing. That's the only thing that allows us to get to where we want to go. So if we stay in this lukewarm bath of comfort, whether it's just a brain or entire body, you can't transcend. You need the death to get rebirth. But let me put it this way. Elon Musk comes it out, and you're not the first monkey in the space. Let's just say there's 10,000 ahead of you. All of a sudden, there's a new type of thing where they plug it into your brain, and you can click a button, and now you got 20 new languages in your head. And now you can travel the world, and you can now feel like you're a part of everyone's culture because you can speak the language, right? Would you do it then? Like, at what point do you do it before you're like, you know what? Everybody here speaks 1,000 languages. Like, I watch my grandma who doesn't know how to use her iPhone or have an iPhone or has ever been on the internet. And it always reminds me of the person outside the party who's like all cold and looking inside through the window. And they're like, oh, they're looking like they're having a great time. Right? Like, that's what I see. At some point, you're going to stand still and the party's going to keep on rolling. You either get on TikTok or you don't, but the party's going to keep rolling. So like, my question for you is like, is there a point in time, do you feel like you could see yourself getting an implant in the brain for something like that? Or is this like, inside the brain, it's okay inside the ear, but it's not okay inside the brain. I'm just pushing your limits. I want to see at what point.
Yeah, inside the ear, you could actually, take it off and be just human again. Yeah, and it's interesting. I was at CES last year. It was like one of the last conferences before the COVID shutdowns,
Yeah.
and I saw a company that has just basically an AirPod that converts languages. And it does it within, I think, 2 seconds. So, you input somebody speaking Spanish to you, it converts it into English within like a 2 second lag time. So I totally understand what you're saying, because I'm also on the technology train of like, please, people, don't be afraid, because like the train is moving, the train is rolling right now, and it's only a matter of time. You have to jump on and create a impact, that's actually positive for the planet, because all the zombie shooters and the porn and everything else is only accelerating. So it's like, how do we create healthy alternatives that are just as engaging and fun?
Yeah.
So I definitely understand you on that point. But I think there's also other things to consider around just like restoring the ecology of the planet, and focused on things that chip in your brain may or may not make you more efficient at. But ultimately, yeah, I think that the singularity in that experience is going to be something that there's going to be healthy alternatives, where you don't need to have Elon Skynet being plugged in and being able to like deactivate your brain if you misbehave.
Hackers. That's the thing that gets me to not want to do it. Hackers. That's the only issue. I don't mind, like, you can hook me up to so many different devices. I've already got like, there's connected to all these different, right now we're connected through time and space. Like, humanity's superpower, one of our superpowers, is to use technology to connect through time and space. We first did it with language, and then we did it with signs, and then we did it, on and on and on. It's just the next evolution. We're using technology to recreate unity. That's what it is. And it just all depends on, the only thing is, we have both the dark and the light in us. And if you don't acknowledge that, then you have repression and reproaching, and then you can become like Cosby, where he's all sunshine and beauty, and there's a deep, dark demon in the background. So I think it's important to acknowledge them, and it's also important to design systems that incentivize you to do the right thing, right? If you create poor incentive structures, that's a problem. The problem with the capitalism is that it is growth above all else, and they found a way to detach themselves from the actual true cost of something into some sort of monetary value. So this is $1 for gas, but you don't really look at the cost it has on the fish life and everything else and the biofeed. And so the problem is that we only look at it in one myopic view set of the impact that it has. And I think there's a way to look at that and say, okay, how do we use this technology to make a more powerful incentivization structure to help people become better, both with like, how do you use them to transform to become better? And then also, how do you help other people to transform to become better? And I think that's something that we're very both in alignment with. And I'd love to, I'm gonna dive into that. But one thing I want to say about that is, like, you can always run on two fuel sources, right? With everything. Sugar, destruction, right? One kind of sugar is one kind of, it's immediate, it's fast, it's going, right? Sugar's like fear, immediate, fast. It's useful, it gets you up and going, but it's not sustainable. You can't run on fear forever. You're right. First brain, second brain, fast mind, slow mind, right? Same thing with keto. It's a healthier fuel source, right? But it's slower to get into gear. So, so my question for you is, knowing that that's important, like, how do you plan to structure your, we'll call it transformational metaverse? How you plan to use that to actually to help people evolve themselves, knowing that we have both sides of this, both the chimpanzee and the bonobo inside of us?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, well, what we're doing with GeniusX, which is the VR education platform I've been building with Joe Polish and Nick Janicki, who I brought up from True Rest, is really, yeah, I mean, looking at it, it's so funny. You were talking about how you like to do the podcast format as the hero's journey arc, because that's very much what we're thinking about for educational experience. But, again, it's like the sugar of that experience is the awe factor of being in a virtual metaverse where anything's possible. You're infinitely creative, and you're able to do things in the virtual world that you could never do in real life. And then the long term, the keto version of that is actually being able to utilize skills that you progress through as you unlock doors and modules and content and apply your knowledge in an actual virtual world where, say you're learning how to do public speaking. Now, all of a sudden, boom, you're up on a virtual stage talking in front of 100 people. You're actually acquiring those skills, and then you're taking your headset off and applying them to the real world. So, utilizing the technology as, yes, this is the most fun thing that you could possibly be doing if you want to learn anything. And the long-term effects are going to live with you forever.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I always look at it in terms of the transformation should be the byproduct, right? It should be the frosting on the cake of the vegetables that you eat. It's
right.
And that makes a lot of sense. So then you bring in with the razzle dazzle, the experience of the VR and the wonder, and oh my God, this is so great. And then along the way, that slow skill building that they go through, they evolve, and then they stick around, because of the identity of who they become along the way.
Yeah, really cool. And that's, if you look at, anything that the mainstream and the reasons that we have the mental health issues and the physical health issues that we do, it's like fast food, reality TV, pharmaceuticals, pop this pill, 20 minutes later, you feel different, and then you look at all of the biohacking and the, going to therapy. No one wants to go to therapy. I've been going to therapy recently, EMDR therapy, which is a trip in itself, but I don't want to go there, but then I feel amazing afterwards. Same thing with getting in a cold plunge or doing a sauna. And the reason that I believe that it hasn't pervaded into the mainstream at the level that it should be, and people really prioritizing their mental health, is because a lot of these things are eat your vegetables. Like, do this thing. You're not going to enjoy it. It's not very accessible. It's going to be hard, and it's probably going to be expensive. And then at the end of it, you'll feel better. And then you look at fast food, and it's the complete opposite model. So it's really thinking in that framework, like, how do we design experiences and allow things to be extremely accessible and affordable and enjoyable to where people are like, of course, I'd rather be doing this than, passively watching something or using it as an escapism tool.
And that's a hard thing, because like humans, we would want to be the hero of the story, right? But we don't want to put in the effort. Like we want the muscles, we want the cake and eat it too. We want both of those things at the time. And so, people that sell you things, they'll sell, what will you buy? And some people, they just want a candy bar, right? And so they'll give you candy bars because sugar's cheap and da. So it's like, how do you create a system that inspires people to want that struggle, to want that pain, to want that growth? It's really hard to be the dungeon master and the player in the game of life. And so you've got to like whip yourself to move forward on the path when you don't want to, because it's a challenge, and you need to find some sort of meaning and purpose that can keep you going on that grind, which is, or you can trick people and make the grind fun. There's like a zombie run game where you're running, being chased by zombies, and like as you run, they get closer to you. It's pretty funny. It's that we've done. One thing I want to mention is that EDMR. So EMDR, that's a rapid eye movement for basically a desensitization of negative experiences. It's like, imagine a negative memory, and then you move your eyes back and forth, and you kind of like, same thing, like you put a knot on the back of somebody, you put your finger in there, and then again, it shakes that pain loose over time. It desensitizes you to that experience. I've done it. It's pretty effective as a system. And actually, the reason why I bring up that the challenge I invited you to, what I put together for a transformational VR, we had a whole bunch of people come in. And I taught them in 5 days, okay, what is transformational reality? What is the metaverse coming? What is happening? Why is it so important to design things that aren't just fun, but also transformative? And what does that look like? And we had a whole bunch of people. And I've ran hackathons for a number of, since 2014, for a bunch of different universities and groups and organizations. And doing this thing online, I kind of dragged people through the deep end and had them ending up pitching to Rev Kyle and Tipitat at the very end, and going from like not knowing anything to that was kind of like the deep end. But the guy that ended up winning, Lee, he actually is making an EMDR virtual reality application, and he'll be designing that out. And then
amazing.
Yeah, once he gets ready to showcase that, I'm gonna then reconnect him with Tipitat and Kyle, and where I'll take a look at his progress from it. But it was really cool to put together this event and and watch something that could actually be usable, because, you know, this EMDR is something that could be very doable in VR as an application. It's a simple concept. It's just the execution, like, you know, with most businesses. So I love that you brought that up, because it literally leads right into transformational virtual reality and how you can apply it.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of my many hats that I wear is really scouting these conscious developers. And you know, as a publisher with Andromeda, we're always looking at new content that we could fund and bring to market. We actually are currently looking at 3 or 4 titles and wanting to bring 2 of them to market in the next year. And so I'm constantly talking to these, you know, very alien. I call them alien developers because, unlike most computer programmers, they're extremely embodied. You know, meaning that they're doing the transformational work. They're meditating. They understand how to move in time and space. You know, they're connected with their body, which is extremely important for VR just in general. But when they're designing these experiences, you know, it's amazing to see. And there's more and more of them popping up all the time. And yeah, I'm kind of like head hunting, and you know, I've even been dreaming up just like creating some sort of mastermind group around just conscious developers, and you know, just exchanging ideas around biometrics and how to integrate biosensors and what they're doing with, you know, again, like Trojan horsing these esoteric concepts into their games. And yeah, so we actually recently signed a title with Functronic Labs, which is an amazing studio that put together Fuji, which was a big Quest 1 hit that I was a big fan of. So we are not starting development with them for another maybe 8 to 10 months, but the code name of the game is Hypercruiser. And it's very much focused on like a space exploration game where you're actually using your biometrics to control the environment. You know, you come up across a bunch of meteors and you ohm into the headset and like break the meteors apart using your sonic weapon, you know? So like, we're really starting to I've been enjoying the creative process of actually working, you know, on the storyline and things too. But that's where we get super excited, is like, I love designing these experiences, bringing them to market. I love the fact that we could help fund these projects and, you know, continuing to cultivate community around it. Because when we talk about transformative practices in general, the most important thing is the community built around it. And that's why companies like Facebook are pushing so hard on social VR. Not only do they know that that's how their applications are going to grow, you know, at speed, at the speed they want, but it's also, as a community, it's so important to hold each other accountable and to be able to progress on our self-development journeys with people that are doing the same thing.
100% agree. And Facebook, as their typical path, is to see other technologies, reverse engineer it, and then use their big marketing gusto to push those people out. That fell flat on the face when they tried to do Horizons. Like, oh, we're going to copy Rec Room. We're going to make Horizons. It's going to be just like that exactly, but just nicer. And then nobody went to it, and they goofed, and then they slipped, and they go, whoops, missed the mark on that one. You know what? Instead, we're going to become a metaverse company, and instead we need everybody else's support because we can't steal this. And that's the biggest issue, is that it's bigger than them. And so they realized that they had to back off. I appreciate them for the headsets and the development dollars that they went into and being able to support that. But it's definitely going to take a community, and not only one community. It's going to take a bunch of different communities being able to do this. And one of the things I've seen, because running VR communities in a bunch of different places, is there's this thing that happens where it's a cycle. The cycle is this: you go into a space, right? And you kind of get an idea. You get a little bit of, you get, oh, I think I know what I need to do. Then you go into a hole. You disconnect from the community. You don't realize what's out there. You don't see anything in the space. And you think your idea is the best idea ever. And then you have the fear that someone's going to steal your idea. They're going to take it. They're going to recopy it. And then they don't show anybody anything. And you disconnect from the community. And all of a sudden you're isolated. And then you build something that nobody wants. Because you didn't talk to anybody. You never got that feedback. You didn't get the community involved in early enough. And then it sucks. And then you get disheartened, and then you quit, and then you probably stop working on the thing. And then you go take something else that you don't want to do. And finding the ways to get people to show, hey, John, welcome to the party, brother. Hey, sorry, John just commented. He's one of the moderators from the groups. Good to see you, man. Let me know, John, if you got any questions. Yeah, people get in these silos and this fear this fear of like, someone's going to steal my idea. Someone's going to take my thing. I had the idea for the metaverse. I was going to make the next Facebook. Can you talk to me a little bit about alleviating people's fears about showing off their idea and the importance of creating a community? Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So, one of the easy mantras is first to market is first to mind share. So I'm a big believer that, yeah, I mean, to share your ideas openly. Obviously, there's some things like once we're building an education platform right now that I keep pretty close to the chest, but mostly I'm sharing all of my ideas constantly. And I've been in the creative world, within the music festival space for a decade, and watching a lot of the successful guys that shined through them being able to share their ideas openly, because at the end of the day, there's only very small percentage of people that can execute, and subconsciously you trying to execute on someone else's idea is probably not going to lead to a successful project. And then on top of that, I would share my ideas openly for all sorts of cool activations and now with VR experiences, because I hope that somebody does it, because I can't possibly produce all the ideas that come into my mind, and I'm sure most people are like that. And B, like, when somebody actually here's my idea, I'm already 10 steps ahead of what I'm sharing with them. I've already been processing this so much and working on it for so long that the glimpse that they get of where I'm at now is only a fraction of, what it's going to be in the future. So I think it's really important to just have confidence in yourself and understand that most people are not out to get you. They actually want to help and bounce ideas off of you. And you're more than likely actually going to receive not only, like constructive criticism, but you're going to receive some ideas from them as well. And it's all about this, kind of the Da Vinci effect, which is essentially not trying to be good at one thing, but combine the 2 or 3 ideas that you really enjoy and that you're skilled at. And then that becomes a whole new industry, and you become the leader in that new field that you just created. So, thinking about digital therapeutics, like, how do you combine biofeedback, digital therapeutics, and psychedelic therapy? We might be the only company doing that in the world, if not, the one of the first. So it's interesting to just think about it in that way of not trying to be the best doctor, but all of a sudden, combining these different modalities. And I think really sharing ideas with creators in that space will allow you to stack those experiences and make a better product. And like you said, utilize the community to form something much more epic than you could have ever imagined.
Dude, 100%, man. I totally agree that the first market's first to mind share, and then the idea also, the hive mind is always better than the individual self. And so hive minding that thing out there, and then knowing that people are, I still think people are inherently lazy. Like, you can give them an idea, go try to go execute it. Like, you know what it takes to go build, especially a multiplayer virtual reality experience. If someone's just like, I've got this idea, like, and that's the whole reason why I put together, like, I'm also working on a thing of like, how do I help make a piece of this transformational metaverse? How do we make these experiences, right? And if you're not going to make the internet, you're not making the internet, right? And there's going to be some kid tomorrow that finds a way to make $1 billion online. And we are 10, 20 years behind where the internet is. And so it's really about, like, I think one of the challenges people have too is they don't realize that to be an entrepreneur, virtual reality entrepreneur, anybody, you are of service to the people. You are serving someone else. You need to provide value in that space. And if you only hold that, like, oh, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna create this NFT cryptocurrency thing, and then I'm gonna go into the marijuana industry, and it's gonna be you're just trying to find that quick buck. And if you don't really find a way to be of service to people, you're never gonna grow. But like, Bing still exists as a thing, and there's people using it, right? And so I just think that, trying to get people to open up their hearts is going to give them so much more, but it's so hard because they have that fear, right? Everybody wants deep connections. Nobody wants to be vulnerable, right? It's a challenge. So what's your big holy grail hope to God for making this upgrading it yourself metaverse?
Well, I'm working on it. With with Sound Self, we really, so, there's two parts. I'm very much focused on mental health, and I'm very much focused on education. I see those two problems that need solutions as essentially the foundational pillars for the rest of the chaos that's happening in the world. If we can improve those two qualities, at least in my opinion, then everything else shifts. So on the mental health side, the grand vision is that we essentially create a STEAM platform for digital therapeutics. So, as a publisher with Andromeda, we're constantly looking at publishing content, but as a digital therapeutics company, we're actually looking at acquiring content, bringing those teams on board, and then creating an ecosystem of different digital therapeutics for things ranging from psychedelic therapy and assisting with clinicians to things like depression, anxiety, whatever it is. But essentially creating a platform that in most cases could eliminate pharmaceuticals. That's kind of the goal, right? It's like, okay, there's obviously pharmaceuticals, there's a yeah exactly, but there's some pharmaceuticals that people need, and that's that's a fact, but there's a lot that people don't. And I've been blown away by seeing the companies that surround us and that the products that we're building and understanding their capabilities. So that's on the mental health front. And then on the education front, I actually rewatched recently Waiting for Superman, which I think was the #1 documentary back in 2010. It's incredible, and it's all about the education system being broken here in the US and what led to that. And it was extremely inspiring for just a more long-term vision of what VR and education could do. But a big thing that they focus on in that documentary is around that the student is really only as good as the teacher in a lot of cases, and the teachers aren't being incentivized to teach at a higher level. They're not being paid bonuses. A lot of them have tenure, so even if they fuck up really bad or they're awful teachers, they don't get fired. And there's this really corrupt system within the education, like K through 12 is what they really focus on. So with VR and education, not only do I see it being able to access the best teachers in the world, but you're able to do it at the fraction of a cost. So, a headset now is $300. I imagine 5 years from now, it'll be $100. And right now a laptop is 3x that, a smartphone is 3x that. So not only could we provide education at scale to underprivileged youth and third world countries, but then you're also able to create a learning experience that's 100 times more engaging and impactful than anything that you could do on Zoom, and a lot of times in person as well. So it's just a matter of, for me, it's those two lofty goals: getting rid of the pharmaceutical industry and getting people in touch with themselves to sustain mental health, and then rewriting the education system where you could ultimately change your life with a headset right from the comfort of your home.
This is so fun. No, this is great, man. I think it's beautiful. That is amazing. Curing mental illness, because I think we all live lives. A lot of people live lives of quiet desperation, right? And they go to the grave with the song unsung inside them, right? And that is one of the biggest challenges is how do you get people, right? Yeah, I'm taking, you've been to Burning Man? I take it you've.
Yeah, a few times.
Yeah, I bet. Okay. But if you look at Burning Man, right, what are they really good at? Right. It's all about having your inner child come out. Right. The whole thing is like this. Burning Man's like, do you want to come play with me? No. Okay. Do you want to come play with me? No. Okay. So you create this container that allows people to have their inner childlike self be completely free. And ultimately, you got to find ways to be able to make that happen. There's a story, Joseph Campbell, the Golden Buddha. Do you know about that story?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like the monks' village, the Mongols come and raid the monks' village. The monks run away. They cover up the statue because it's made of gold. They don't want to be taken. So they put all the clay around it. And then the monks come back when the horde goes away, only to find that they completely forgot about the statue. Till a monk kid hits the statue, a piece of gold falls off. They rip off all those pieces. They find out that the Buddha's golden, the Buddha's golden, the Buddha's golden. And that's the story about us and our trauma. Our trauma, our survival patterns, our original instances, whatever you want to call it, is all about getting you to remove the armor that protected your inner child and to get you to be completely let your own inner light shine. And the challenge is this. We want to have our inner child be free, be heard, and really just shout it all out there. At the same time, we care what people think,
Mm-hmm.
which creates inner civil war. And so if you look at that, if you look at what Burning Man did, Burning Man created this environment. Go, I don't care who you are. You be whoever you want to be, do whatever you want to do, but be completely free. And that's one of the biggest challenges with creating the mental illness and curing that, is getting people to confront those inner demons, and then getting them to realize that their inner child is strong enough and they don't need to protect themselves and hide themselves. But it's going to take a lot of effort, man. And I wish you the best on that journey. I also do work with inner city kids and stuff like that, using VR and other things around this exact same stuff.
Amazing.
Using Hereos format, and it's going to take, I think it's going to take a whole bunch of crazy conscious developers to go push in that direction to make this happen. What advice would you give? Like, let's just say there's someone out there that wants to get involved in this kind of space. What would you say to them to inspire them to get into this space? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, just from my own path, it was really interesting to step out of the creative director, working with Insomniac and all these big music production companies, and then stepping all of a sudden into my first E3 and my first game developer conference. And all of a sudden, I had a huge background of video games when I was 10 to 18. And then I completely stopped. I got a girlfriend and hid my Xbox in the closet and, didn't want her to see it. And, and then just was fully disengaged, oh, I'm going to be cool now and go to college without it, But my whole childhood was based off of playing with, with my head down on my Game Boy when we go on family vacation. So obviously it brought back a lot. I do have a background in it without actually being an industry professional in it. But the most beautiful part about that experience of just walking into these conferences with an entirely different background is it was very apparent that other industries need to be involved. That it doesn't matter if you're a programmer, because there's a lot of programmers in the game industry, but there's not a lot of business people in the game industry. There's not a lot of communicators in the game industry. There's not a lot of people that, there's all sorts of positions within creating content in VR, including, completely different subcategories of I've been really into narrative-based, VR films lately, where you get to choose your own adventure, like Wolves in the Walls or Baba Yaga was really awesome. I just recently played that. But, there's just so many different positions that you don't have to be a programmer. My brain does not work that way. But my brain does work in the way of creating stories. My brain works in the way of strategizing, creating partnerships, distributing content. So I think that that's a big piece to take, is that you don't have to go to coding school or MIT to be involved in VR. You could take your passion, and again, that's kind of the theme of the talk, is this Da Vinci theory of really taking that skill that you have and then implementing it into this emerging technology to become the unique you, the avatar that is different from everyone else coding. So yeah, I mean, that I think is huge, that you don't have to have that background.
Yeah, it's not one way. You don't need to try to become something else. You just want to become more of yourself and apply it to this industry, which is awesome. What so we know what your holy grail is, right? And we talked about this mental illness, getting rid of pharmaceuticals. We won't say that too loudly because, careful. No, but if you look at they're coming for you. They're coming for you. Run and hide. Okay.
At least it's documented on this podcast. So you know if something happens. It wasn't an accident, folks.
Why is there a red dot on your forehead? I don't see what's going on. It seems to be moving around. Anyways, it's what on that note, what is the dragon you need to slay to make your holy grail come true? What is the thing that you think it might be too big for you and you don't know if you'll survive the encounter? What is that thing?
That's a very interesting question. I immediately want to, we work with the Facebook team all the time, but I immediately want to resort to that, large corporations possibly not using the technology for the general public's best interest. But yeah, ultimately, I think, we've been talking about trauma therapy and things, and I just want to reflect it as an internal, question around what does it look like to get out of my own way. I recently read Matthew McConaughey's book, which was much better than I was expecting, Green Lights. And he has a whole chapter called The Art of Rolling Downhill. So, I think that when we're talking about things like mental health and education, it's like we talk a lot about preventative medicine, but what we don't talk a lot about is like preventative lifestyle. So what does that look like in not only like biohacking for your body, but preventative soul care, so you don't have these mental breaks, educating yourself on the things that are coming so that you're ready when they get there. So I think really my biggest dragon to slay is just getting out of my own way and not only doing the preventative things that prepare me for the future, but also being more in yin. That's a huge thing for me. I'm such a yang person, just like fire and action and goal oriented, and more, and my girlfriend has really been helping me with this as well, is just embracing the yin and giving myself time to basically do what we do with like water fasting, but doing it for your mind. And that could look like meditation, but I also recently started doing content detoxes where I'll spend a week or two absorbing no content, meaning not even productive content. So no podcasts, no books, no articles, no TV, obviously, like all social media, all of that. The only thing I'll consume is music, and then obviously like the important stuff I need to do for work. But yeah, I mean, literally just like fully disengaging, which allows your brain to actually digest. We're just in this constant consumption mode. So the more that we could drop into this yin flow, relaxation, allowing life to happen for us, as opposed to trying to happen to life, and really just allowing myself to digest all of the information that we were constantly consuming.
That's awesome, and nail on the head with that one, man. The punchline of the what's the dragon you to slay? The dragon is you.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You totally nailed it on that one, man. I love it. This has been beautiful, man. I really appreciate your time on here. Is there any last question, any last things that you'd like to say before you tell people how they can get a hold of you or find more of what you do?
Yeah, my two big asks is we are rolling out Sound Self right now. It's called Sound Self Pro because it's a therapeutic version. So any therapists that are interested in using digital therapeutics in their practice, particularly psychedelic therapists, but we're open to all areas. If you're interested in using this, feel free to reach out, and my team would be happy to give you more information, give you a setup for the hardware and software. And then on the education front, we are in the process of onboarding a bunch of e-learning coaches. So if you or some of your friends, it's one of the fastest growing industries. So I imagine a lot of people have online courses or, have friends that use Coursera or Kajabi. They want to take their passive 2D content into a virtual world. We're here to build that out and, shoot green screens and make them holograms and design their VR metaverse Hogwarts. So yeah, but those are the two asks: therapists and teachers ready to up level.
That's beautiful. I love it. This has been a pleasure. We'll sign off. I'll have you stay on just a minute so we can do some wrap post closure things. But this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on. This has been a blast, and I appreciate you. And I will see you and everyone listening in another reality.
Great. Thanks, man.
See you, Lyle. 1 second. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others. Thank you for listening. See you on the other side.